Some use Twitter, some use Pinterest, some Facebook, while others IG. But social media is actually here to entice an entire society. But then again, on any platform, speaking about addiction often comes with some concern. It's something that will leave you paralyzed. Some type of addiction it is. And I'm actually here to let you know that I speak the language of not only a social media addict, but also a drug addict. Hello, my name is Demetrius, and I'm an addict. Now imagine with me quickly, it's dark outside, and either it's very late or it's very early in this cold, damp room where two pills lay in front of me. One red pill and one blue pill. As if this were the pharmaceutical matrix where both options lead me down a rabbit hole to whichever world I prefer to be in at this time. You see, if I take the red pill, life speeds up and the hair-raising excitement of productivity rushes through my veins. However, if I take the blue pill, life then slows down and without a worry in the world, prime time becomes nap time. But if you're an addict like me, there's actually one more option, as I'm the one with both these drugs residing in front of me. I could just take both pills and really see how far this rabbit hole really goes. And with that, I welcome you to the life and wonders of addiction. You see, addict is a really interesting word. Not because the word addict can be utilized to describe an alcoholic at AA trying to piece his life back together, but instead for the reason from the amorphous lexicon of language stemming from social media and how even in this Twitter timeline generation, we've transformed the word addict to now describe anyone who has a shared obsession with things such as, but not limited to, Beyonce, pictures of your cat, and pretty much whatever classifies as brunch nowadays, which by social media standards boils down to alcohol plus eggs. And so understanding that addiction can be utilized to describe anything from heavy drugs to heavy social media consumption to a heavy breakfast, it's important that I start my story on the language of addiction with a look at the story of addiction itself. Addict, for all of you collegiate scholars in the room, is actually derived from the Latin word addicere, with which in its infinitive form means to either sacrifice or to devote one's life to either someone or something. In the Roman Empire, it was utilized to describe someone who was sold into slavery, but then in the 16th century, it was utilized to describe a group of renegade monks within the Catholic Church. And these monks were legitimately crazy, because it was this set of monks became so obsessed with their desire to reach heaven and a plea for God's love and affection that they developed an almost mental schizophrenic displacement where they could no longer separate between the beautiful imagery of the Bible from the sometimes painful truths that come along with living in the real world. And I'm no monk, but that is the root cause of how a boy stepping into manhood, looking for love, found that drugs can't cover up lost loves just as much as love itself is a drug. You see, growing up on the south side of Chicago, I was always a shy kid. And I mean the type of shy that I would see a friend from school inside of your local grocery store. And I would get so nervous to speak that I would turn fire engine red prior to going ghost white and then take off in the opposite direction to avoid what in my mind would be an awkward situation. Between the 8th grade and high school, I remember being so paralyzed with fear. I mean, there was a fear of being around pretty girls. I mean, it would shake me up, it would frighten me. I was a kid. I didn't know anybody. But there was also a fear, an overarching fear of not being man enough as I grew up 9 months with my single mother. And as many boys do, I started looking for friends or brothers to help me understand what it's like to transition from boyhood to manhood. And so according to my mother, I started kicking it with the wrong group of friends. I mean, these were my boys, but they were gangbanging, selling drugs, and doing things with girls that they weren't supposed to be doing. And to fit in at this time, and because of the allure of this lifestyle, I fell in love with the lifestyle. I mean, who wouldn't at this age? And during this time, I also realized I put up the worst stats in football history. I mean, I played sports to get girls, but it seems when I hit the field, and rather than being an attraction to girls, it was pretty much a repellent because of the statistic that I put up. And I kept on trying to figure out ways in order to relax around women in order to have an intimate conversation. And so in comes solution number one. my drug usage. Marijuana, Mary Jane, reefer, Chiba, Indo, but it smelled like out though. I'm talking about weed, folks. And when I think of weed, I think about this very solid kid I knew I could look up to. His name was Kojo. Now, Kojo and I met in chemistry class, and me, Kojo, and a third friend, Neff, we decided that we were going to smoke one day, and I thought that that would be my aphrodisiac with women. And so, sitting in the back of a Hyundai Tiburon, it was probably like a 2006 to be exact, all black body, beautiful car. I'm sitting in the back listening to Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds playing by the Beatles as I take my first hits of marijuana. And I remember catching this wave and this energy that was it wasn't pleasant. It was more awkward, if anything. And so just to keep the story short, I didn't gain that confidence and I didn't find my aphrodisiac in order to talk to women or seduce women at that time. But don't worry, college came about. College for me was a time of trial, error, seed planting, and chain breaking. I was finally somewhat popular, and with the Chicago swagger that I had, I was kind of fitting in quite well. So I found my confidence, I found a new group of friends to hang out with, and least importantly, but most importantly for this story, I found a new addiction, Adderall. You see, Adderall in college, it's the fun drug. For many people, if you hadn't studied all semester and you now need to cram everything that you needed to learn in a week's time, take Adderall. If you have a Bio 242 test in the morning, or for you engineering students, you have a big engineering test in the morning, pop an Adderall. I guarantee you, you'll make it through the night and you'll wake up at 7 a.m. and you'll do fine on that test. Or if you want to go out and have all the energy in the world throughout the nighttime and wake up for that 8:30 class on Friday, which you probably shouldn't have selected, pop an Addy. He'll be all right. Some of you all know about it. But during this time, I understood the highs and lows of taking drugs as well. I received a call on Tuesday night stating that my best friend had been murdered on the south side of Chicago. And no sooner than I put that phone down, I found out that my ex had just slept with two of my soon-to-be frat brothers. And so I started putting a blanket of drugs on top of, or an addiction on top of, my problems. And that doesn't help anything, because just as things started getting worse, I received a letter in the mail. And this letter read, State of Indiana versus Demetrius Glover. I had 2 years of prison time looming over my head at this point, and I couldn't understand why was it me who couldn't seem to get things right. But don't worry, I figured out a way in order to help my problem, right? So I started taking more and more Adderall during this time period. I actually got a prescription for it in order to help my case and to help with the self-diagnosed ADHD. At this point, I was actually prescribed the dangerous duo, Adderall and Xanax. That's a horrible, horrible, horrible combo for anybody who knows about these drugs. For Adderall, I was prescribed actually 20 milligrams Adderall XR. On a normal day, I was taking between 60 to 75 milligrams. I mean, after all, Adderall is my daytime hustling, busting, stressing, charming medicine so I can survive. And for Xanax, I was prescribed 0.5 milligrams. On a normal day, I was taking between 2 to 3 milligrams. So that's 1 pill prescribed versus 6 pills taken. I was mixing all of this with a gang of Cali's finest green and also liquor, shaken, not stirred, with low self-confidence by way of crushed self-esteem. I'm 27 now, and I knew I had the gift to connect with people, but these drugs had me stuck in a mental asylum. I imprisoned myself within these drugs. Day after day, I was taking these drugs over and over again. And there was a point where I was on 121st and Lexington in Harlem in New York City, and I remember looking at my bank account, and I remember seeing, and I had lost my job that I came out to New York with. And I remember seeing $48 in my checking and savings account. I don't know if you all know what that feels like, but it's a horrific feeling for a 26-year-old. And I couldn't seem to understand, once again, why me? Now, during this time, I did successfully attain a job at Apple. It was a part-time job, and I wasn't making rent payments, and so I found myself homeless, couch surfing for the next 6 months. I didn't seek treatment during this time either. I just kept on taking more and more drugs, more and more drugs. And I started realizing I was in this mental asylum. I was almost, as I told you about those monks early on, I was in this mental asylum and I couldn't find my way out of it. And I started asking questions like, why can't anybody see the pain inside of me? Why can't anybody save me? When will all this pain be over? Why can't anybody stop me? God, where are you? God, please help me. God, I need you. God, please just end this pain forever. I don't want to be here anymore. In August 2018, I found myself in a cold hospital bed. You see all of these fun drugs, the Adderall, the Xanax, the liquor, the weed, all of these things combined, they don't make for a good trick at all. It makes for a death wish. And so just as, like I said, social media is an addiction, so are drugs as well. So I found myself on this hospital bed and it was cold, and I thought back to how a friend had invited me to her church a few weeks earlier. And in the back of this room, she took me and she put her hands on my shoulder and she told me, she whispered to me, she said, God is going to give me a word that's going to help me to understand how to catapult my life forward. And that word that I envisioned, and I kid you not, a lot of people say that they see things and they understand God and hear God clearly. I actually saw this word. That word that I saw was conquer. I guarantee it was conquer. I knew it was time to conquer fear, depression, suicide, anxiety, and most importantly, I had to conquer that addiction. And so at this point, 2 of my other friends died as well. One from the south side of Chicago, another one was murdered. And another fellow drug abuser I went to Purdue University with, well, he crashed his car in California and he died. They were both 26 and I was 26 as well, so that shook me up. At this point, I knew it was time to man up and time to tackle these addictions because my mother never needed to receive a call about her 26-year-old son dying. So during this time, I said, let me give my all to understanding this journey that we call life. And see, when you give your all to understanding the journey that we call life, it doesn't matter how many inhibitions or how many addictions that you've had, whether it be social media or whether it be a drug of your choice. It does not matter. When you go all in, it doesn't make you perfect, but it helps you become more comfortable with your imperfections. That's the honest to God truth. And it also allows you to allow God to take root and form something inside of you that will shape your life into something way bigger. So when you go all in on understanding your truth, I guarantee you beauty will blossom. And so you can drop any inhibitions or any inhibitions or any addictions and become the beautiful soul that you were destined to be. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Demetrius and I'm an addict. Thank you.